Alright, so let's shift our focus and talk about our global environmental picture. I'm going to outline 4 different concerns, major concerns that we have environmentally around the world. Okay, and everything that we talk about throughout this semester will relate to one of these in some way, and some of them, are related to each other, etc. But we'll get into that, like I said, today and throughout the rest of the semester. The first big concern is overpopulation, and if you click out and open up this population clock, it really comes from our U.S. government and the census, and looks at not only the U.S. population but our global population. And population is a huge deal, and it really drives every other thing that is going on around the world. When we think about population, 100 years ago, okay, we were at about 1 billion people. Today we're at over 7.2 billion people, and it's climbing rapidly. Okay, China slowed its population a little bit. India is booming still. We're level. There's some negative growth in certain developed countries, but we are growing at an exponential rate. And as you're probably already thinking, hopefully, that has dramatic impact on so many different things. Okay, obviously, if there are more people, we are going to be consuming more than ever. So high consumption, can our land support our people? Are we going to have enough space? Are we going to have enough water? Are we going to have enough food? Okay, basic needs. Are we going to be able to meet them? And we've done a lot of things to circumvent and allow our population to grow. Circumvent, or, basically keep ourselves alive and reproducing. Basically eliminated what takes us out, okay, and kills us. So we have really, gotten out of natural selection. We just keep on going, and we have really successfully increased our population. And at what cost? So there's a big concern about our consumption of land, resources. Are we going to be able to meet those basic needs? What impact is that going to have as more and more countries become industrialized? What kind of pollution impacts is that going to have? Look at China's huge population at like 1.5 billion people. That's a lot of people, and they have serious air pollution problems there. Okay, serious smog issues, and people are getting very sick, etc. So again, we'll talk about that when we talk about air quality and air pollution, but overpopulation drives all of those things. Okay, are we going to overharvest our species for food? Are we going to contaminate our water too much? Are we going to use too much of our water resources? Okay, we're having that issue here in the United States. So anyway, overpopulation drives every other thing that we're going to be talking about, and that is a huge issue that we will address and kind of talk about why that's going on and what we're doing about it later in the semester. All right, in addition, we have the decline in ecosystems. With an increase in population and increased consumption, that leads to overfishing, deforestation, groundwater depletion, groundwater contamination. Okay, all kinds of impacts that affect our ecosystems. Okay, we can't deny that. All right, there are so many things that we're doing that are causing our ecosystem decline. Okay, our housing developments, our building of shopping malls. Okay, all different types of things impact the ecosystem. So we'll talk about all different types of things throughout the semester that are driving this decline. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to number 4, which is the loss of biodiversity, which kind of goes hand in hand with that decline in ecosystems. I mean, some people might say, I've never even heard of that species of plant. That can't be that important. But when we talk about biodiversity, it is so critical on our planet, not only for their ecosystems, but for us as well. Okay, we rely on so many ecosystems for, to regulate our climate, our precipitation, to keep our air clean, to provide us food, right? There are so many things that biodiversity, if we're thinking from selfish purpose, okay, provides us. But when we think about all these amazing ecosystems around our planet, there is just such a diverse community of species that are critical or essential in their own ecosystems. So it might seem like, oh, who cares? You know, we love the giant panda, and we do put a lot of protections in place for that to rebuild those populations. But, you know, some maybe, you know, insect that we think is kind of annoying may, or we never heard of, how important can that be? Well, it can be absolutely a keystone species in its ecosystem. So those two things kind of go together, the decline in ecosystems and a resulting loss in biodiversity. Okay, it is a big deal, and we'll kind of get into that nitty-gritty throughout the semester. Okay, the last one, which I have as number 3, the global atmospheric changes. Obviously, climate change is kind of last on my list, but we will talk about it throughout the semester as it relates, obviously, to carbon, to our energy resources, to our biogeochemical cycles, all of those things. But we'll kind of culminate our semester with our global changes. And climate change is significant, okay? And you know, we'll talk all about it from, you know, what does it all mean? What does it have to do with the greenhouse effect, global warming, all of these different types of things. And what we do, you know, in one place on our planet can absolutely affect another place on our planet. What we put up in the air here in the Midwest can absolutely deposit itself on the East Coast. So we have to consider what we're doing and how that's impacting other places around the world. So when we think about, for example, like I said, climate change, that carbon dioxide increase in the atmosphere is increasing global temperature. And we'll kind of talk about, you know, the controversy involved in all that a little bit later in the, you know, throughout the semester. Okay, so the question is, how can we achieve a long-term sustainable relationship with the natural world? Well, we say there takes 3 different major steps in order to accomplish this. And the first thing is really the sustainability. Okay, what does sustainability mean? It means that the environment can be continued indefinitely without depleting any of the material or energy resources required to keep it running. In the natural world, we see that systems recycle nutrients. They do not exceed the pollutants that can be absorbed by that ecosystem. So, generally speaking, we need to model this in our lives on Earth. We need to become more sustainable and understand how ecology works and how all things are recycled, reused in nature, and waste do not build up. And we do not do that. We produce a lot of waste that we have to landfill or incinerate. We have to get better at recycling, reusing, composting. Okay, modeling that sustainability that exists in nature. And as we'll talk about a little bit later in the semester, there are businesses, corporations who have zero waste facilities where they have reduced the amount of inputs that they need. They have greatly reduced the outputs of waste. And they've been really successful and found it is a good economic decision for them to do that. So we'll talk about that later. But the idea is that we're not going to deplete our natural resources, our fossil fuels, all those things that we are taking out of our system at a greater rate than they can be replaced. The second step is what we call stewardship. And stewardship is really an ethic, and it doesn't just apply to our discussion of the environment. It can really relate to anything that you feel passionate about or are an advocate for. And stewardship is really, you know, actions taken that will benefit the natural world, in our case, and people, regardless of whether it'll benefit you and your generation. So steps that we take now hopefully will protect our Earth for future generations. We might not see the impacts of that in our lifetime, but certainly generations to come will. And we certainly don't want to leave a situation when we're gone that is negative. So, excuse me, even if it doesn't affect us, it's still something that we can do to benefit the natural world, okay, in our situation here in the environment. The last one is what we call sound science. In science, sometimes we say that, we want more research done, or there isn't good enough data yet, okay, to support some kind of theory that we have. When we think about good science, it's based on scientific method of experimentation. We say it's not junk science. We have the proper support to back up our theories. And this is important in all science, that we, make good decisions on good, sound science and good experimentation and data across the board. When students come up to me and they say, is this true? That, I heard about this thing. And I say, well, where did you hear about it? Was it in the Journal of Science? Is it a reputable source? Has that experiment been repeated? What does the data show? Where was the data pulled from? What is the pool of the experiment? Is it big enough? So there's a lot of questions that we pose, and it takes a long time to kind of form our feelings. For example, with climate change, the data wasn't in years ago. We really had a really hard time, understanding this really complex global system and how, the Earth's global temperature rise will impact climates around the world. And it's taken a long time, but the science is in, and we understand it better, and therefore we can make, predictions about where we anticipate things will go in the future. And again, we'll talk about that later in the semester. Just a reminder that chapters 1 and 5 accompany this lecture. You'll find information related to this, so please read through those 2 chapters and complete the related homework assignment that takes you through them.